All right. First, we have breaking news this morning. At least 17 people were killed, including Ukraine's Minister of the Interior and top members of his staff, after a helicopter crashed near a school close to Kiev today. All 9 passengers on board were killed. The other casualties, according to Ukrainian officials, were civilian bystanders, including 3 children. The tragedy comes as part of a series of recent blows to the Ukrainian government. Just yesterday, a top advisor to President Zelensky resigned after claiming that Ukrainian counterstrikes were responsible for an apartment bombing that killed 44 civilians last weekend. In a social media post, the official later described his statement as erroneous and a serious mistake.
Meanwhile, CNN appears to have admitted the quiet part out loud while reporting on the conflict in Eastern Europe. In a Monday article titled "How Ukraine Became a Test Bed for Western Weapons and Battlefield Innovation," one source familiar with Western intelligence tells CNN, quote, "Ukraine is absolutely a weapons lab in every sense because none of this equipment has ever actually been used in a war between 2 industrially developed nations. This is a real-world battle test." Here at home, Republicans' temperature on U.S. intervention in the Russia-Ukraine war has hit new lows. A majority of GOP voters, 52% to 48%, want their member of Congress to oppose further Ukraine funding. Nonetheless, CNBC reports that across the pond, over at the World Economic Forum in Davos this weekend, U.S. officials met privately with global allies and business leaders to rally around ongoing assistance to the war-torn nation. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who previously opposed Ukraine's admission into NATO, also revealed his change of heart at the WEF, noting, quote, "The idea of a neutral Ukraine under these conditions is no longer meaningful." The Prime Minister of Finland wasn't far behind, pressing the importance of supporting Ukraine as long as needed. Let's watch.
Do you think if this war in Ukraine lasts 3, 4 years, 5 years, Europe has the staying power to see it through, to continue supporting Ukraine, deterring Russia, dealing with the energy issues that arise out of it?
I think the only message that we need to send that we will support Ukraine as long as needed.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that people are willing to say that. I guess it shouldn't be so surprising to me. I guess from their perspective, the posture has to be that you maintain that stance, even if you don't feel that way internally or behind closed doors, because you don't want to put out the public perception to Russia that if they just last a certain amount of time, that they can wear out the other side. But from a
that's exactly what neoconservatives would say about the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. That, well, we can't, if we say when we're going, then they'll just wait. Then they'll know there's a time limit on our commitment. And figures like John McCain, a sort of intellectual leader of the neoconservative wing of the Republican Party, said, well, yeah, if it's 100 years, it's 100 years.
Yeah.
Better the fight, their view was better the fight happening there, better all the destruction taking place in Iraq and Afghanistan than, the terrorists here at home. Of course, there's a lot of reason to think that maybe our involvement there is what inspires terrorists at home, etc. But it's very similar. I think it's a very similar thinking.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how who is on what side has totally changed, because skepticism, at least eventually, not at first, but eventually, was of Iraq and Afghanistan was there was a lot of that in the media, in progressive media, not at first when they supported it, but they did turn against it. But now that kind of progressive elite, the people at Davos, as long as it takes, totally committed to it. And it's those backward conservative Republicans back home in America asking too many questions about, well, how long is this going to go on? We think we've given a lot of money. Maybe there's an end date to that commitment.
Yeah, I think the fact that both establishment Republicans and Democrats at Davos have a more united pro-endless war message, despite there being a real populist anti-war movement back at home, really speaks to how this is an elite, non-elite, inside-outside game issue, more so than it is a partisan one. Although I do want to give credit to the fact that there is this growing anti-war movement among non-politicos in the Republican Party, which in some ways seems to have more energy and enthusiasm behind it than the left war movement at this moment in history.
They held up Kevin McCarthy's coronation as Speaker of the House for the first time this was done against someone seeking to be Speaker of the House in 100 years over that.
Yeah, and those 20 holdouts, I think, would not have felt so empowered to do that if they didn't know that there was a significant amount of public support behind them.